All right. Good evening. A company called Longshot is building a space gun. I guess no one told them what happened the last time. Our favorite guys, the World Economic Forum, in a quest to remain relevant, announced their list of tech pioneers, 100 companies from 20 countries. Those daring bureaucrats in Brussels are setting their sights on space debris. I guess it's just too Wild West for them. Another German space startup raised a crap ton of cash. That's this is happening all over the place. And here, I love this one. Mexico is threatening to sue us over SpaceX rocket debris. All that and a whole lot more with our guest, Dr. Charles Lurio, coming up. From the news desk, the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Okay, as you know, this podcast is sponsored by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what does the Center for Space Commerce and Finance do? I'm having a hell of an evening this evening. Well, let's go through the litany. You must know it by now. We champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable SMBs, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and efficacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. A lot of our work, especially this podcast, supported by listeners and fans like you. So if you're interested, please be interested. Look at the QR code at the upper left of the screen and take a picture of that, and it will take you right to our donation portal. Keep helping us out. A little on the tip jar each month makes a big, big difference. Thanks so much in advance. Now, joining me now, coughing, sniffling, and sneezing from his pet allergies is Michael Lane, my best space friend from Liftport. Michael, how you feeling?
Oh, man. You know, I don't think I've slept for like 10 days, right? Because I went from here out to Orlando and time zone changes, and then coming back home from Orlando and more time zone changes, and then landing to help my mom out while she's traveling and taking care of her dogs. I don't usually have problems with her dogs, but 4 days and the summertime where they're shedding, I'm kind of dying. So I will be fine, but I would really like to go to sleep. I'm done tomorrow, so I'll be fine. I'll be okay. But yeah, how are you? What's going on?
Oh, me? I'm doing reasonably well. I'm still recovering, I guess, from the conference last week as well, and there's a lot of other stuff going on, and it's just been a very intense few days. Even a week after ISDC, I'm just still there's kind of a long tail to all of this, so and I have to dive right in as always.
Well, it's funny because, you do this thing and it's a really intense 4 days and you meet everybody, you say hi, you shake hands. And for me, I take notes. And then the following week, it's all about reaction to whatever happened the day of at the event. So
that's true. Well, you want to keep the momentum going.
Right.
And so, because that's going to last you until the next conference you go to, I guess. And if I go anywhere this year, the next one for me will be IEC, which is very end of September. So lots to do.
I think I'm going to go to Tomlinson's New Worlds.
Yeah, I'm doing that too.
I'm probably going to do that. That's October. And then pretty sure I'm going to go to the Space Settlement Summit in Florida. So those are kind of two on my to-do list. But that's months away, and a lot's going to happen between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you want to jump into it?
Oh, absolutely. I love this thing. It's you sent me this earlier in the week. That there's always someone that turns up sooner or later that wants to do kinetic space launch, and another company now is starting up called Longshot. Now they're taking a grab at it.
Right.
I look at it a little snarky. I don't, I love the idea, but the idea of kinetic launch of like rail guns and things like that. This goes
Right.
back to Germany in 1943. That was
Yep.
going to be you know what the V1 was and what the V2 was. Well, the V3 was going to be this giant rail gun that never really got going. But people have been playing with that concept ever since. They just love it. And the one I remember the most is back in the end of the 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Saddam Hussein hired a guy who
Yep.
was, I believe he's an American, actually.
Yeah.
And he was really good at doing things like this. And he wanted to build a new weapon, and the guy was willing to build it for him. And somewhere in the middle of the project, mysteriously, it got blown up. And
Right.
he got killed.
He got killed.
So,
Right? Like, I don't know if it was rumor or ever confirmed, but I believe it was Mossad, right? Like
Yeah.
they're not messing around with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were doing the intro for this piece, I'm like, well, maybe they haven't learned the lesson from the last time this happened.
I just couldn't resist the comment, though.
I love it. It's totally accurate. It's totally great. Now, I actually did not know that it started out as originally a World War II weapon. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise to me in this article. But I was immediately thinking the same thing, that this has not worked out well for the folks who have tried it before. But, there's, I'm going to point out these folks. All right, so these are all these first two are pretty well funded. These folks at Green Launch, they were one of our business plan competitors, probably as 2018 or 19 in Austin.
Yeah.
And so this is not new, right? This is kind of a new batch, and I was a little surprised that there were 4 companies working.
Yeah, I remember Spin Launch too. I think they were somebody that we've been involved in at one time or another.
Yeah.
That was 2017-18 period.
As a guy who pushed elevators for a really long time, Earth and Lunar, I do like the idea of mechanical systems getting to space.
Yeah.
But I am I'm a little curious. Who writes a $6 million check for this? I mean, really?
That's I know. Someone who read a lot of Jules Verne when they were a kid, because the whole idea of a moon cannon goes all the way back to 1860 something.
Right. Yeah.
So Hitler was a latecomer, actually. To this.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got next?
Okay. What do we got next? Oh my God. Mexico wants to sue us because Elon Musk is letting pieces of SpaceX material loose in their territory.
I'm not entirely against Mexico on this one.
Yeah.
No, I kind of think they're right about this. Starship doesn't have a great track record yet. I have confidence that they'll fix it, so I'm not one of the naysayers freaking out about it. But I do think they're right. There does need to be some sort of containment. That's what they're talking about. I don't know how much actual damage is happening in Mexico. It's certainly visually dramatic.
It's probably some pollution issues and things like that, because it's not just the launch. I mean, there was this giant explosion a few days ago with a giant fireball that would kind of create a mess. over into Mexican territory, because where they launch is like right on the edge. It's the final little tippy tip of Texas
Yeah.
is where they are. You know,
Yeah.
you step 8 feet this way, you're in Mexico.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I can see where there might be a little concerns. It doesn't really. It's not really clear though in the piece who they intend to sue. Are they suing Musk directly, or are they suing the U.S. government?
Well, I mean, that's an important question, right? Uh, the U.S. government is responsible for everything that its U.S. citizens do in space. That's been,
Absolutely, under treaty obligations going back to 1967. Absolutely
right.
right. So
That's well understood law.
yeah,
So, um, yeah, I think they have to sue the U.S. government, which I don't know how much good that's going to do, considering what our U.S. government's all about these days.
yeah. Well, it also creates an awkward situation for the FAA because they just approved an increase in annual Starship rocket launches from
Right.
5 to 25
Yep.
a year. So I don't know if that latest explosion, slowed down the ambition a little bit, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of splaining to do.
Right. Right.
Sometime soon. All
right. What do you want to talk about next?
Okay. Well, let's see. There's this. What was this thing? It was like, oh, there was actually there was a failed orbital mission. They lost human remains and some other stuff. So there's one failure a few days ago. There was an unconventional payload.
Right.
Aboard an exploration company capsule was lost at sea when it crashed in the ocean. Apparently, there was all sorts of weird stuff in it. They took 300 kilos of cargo around the Earth, included people's ashes and the DNA of more than 166 deceased people provided by Celestis. But it reached orbit. It did all that, but its parachute system failed during reentry. So they're not going to be able to return the flight capsules. And we share the disappointment of our families.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that would be pretty upsetting, actually. You know, yeah, I kind of am sad about that, actually.
Yeah.
Celestis is trying to been doing this this business model of ashes in space and spreading ashes. They've been doing that for 15 years.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
But,
so eventually something's going to go wrong, but it is a little, the families are probably rightfully upset.
Yeah. But interestingly, in addition to those human remains and other payloads, that capsule was carrying cannabis. It was a science experiment. An outfit called Martian Grow, which is an open source citizen science project. They ultimately aim to grow cannabis products on Mars, and they secured a spot on Nix to send seeds and plant matter to low Earth orbit and study how microgravity might affect their germination and resilience. I love cannabis stuff, even if you're not using it to get high. I mean, it's just there's just so many things cannabis can do. It's really God's plan, and that should be. It's very sustainable in terms of when you grow hemp, to make paper and stuff. That was just just grow and grow and grow, and the soil loves it.
I didn't actually read this part of the article, so I'm a little surprised by this. I was oh, it's all about the. That's funny. I actually missed that. Good catch. All right. What is next?
This.
Right. Well, so let's get into your daring bureaucrats.
In Brussels. Yeah.
The daring bureaucrats in Brussels. I kind of love that.
Yeah.
I only posted this really because it's an interesting article. It actually is kind of interesting. What they're trying to do is showcase new tech that's interesting global innovation, right? And if you scroll way the hell down,
you see us.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's
Do you know any of these companies?
Astroforge for sure.
Astroforge, you know Astroforge.
Of course,
Okay.
yeah. Astroforge, yeah. I just got notified from Sean that I'm posting to the private chat, so oops, I will fix that. Thank you, buddy. No, most of these companies I don't know. AI, no surprise there. Lots of AI. But this company is here, local in Seattle. They wanna go to space and put AI data centers in the sky.
Yeah. Okay. There's not enough solar power to power those. I don't know how they're going to do this. AI data centers, because they're talking about building big data centers right here in this country, but they run on like 10 gigawatts of power or something, and the average nuclear power plant produces 1 gigawatt. So I don't know. I can see, well, we'll move it into space and do solar, but it's going to be forever before they do that. I mean, I could see some test runs, a few 1U units get up there. I don't know. I'm not getting the business model for this and how that's going to function.
People have been asking questions just before we started the program. Dr. Lurio was talking about data centers in space. So Chris Stott, I know that guy. I've known him for years. He's got Lodestar.
Yep.
He definitely sees something that I don't see. So I hope he's right. I don't see it yet.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
These guys are local in my area, so they're one of the darlings of the space sector in Seattle. They've put $25 million in their checking account. Like, they've closed some pretty big rounds. This guy is hysterical, right? Because his name is Philip. He's got 3 master's degrees. He was the class president of Harvard. Then he went on to Mackenzie. So, I mean, talk about like vetting. So it kind of doesn't matter what this guy was going to do. Somebody was going to back him, right? He's got all the pedigree for a back startup. But it still doesn't answer the question of what is he doing and does it make sense? Curiously, he does not have much of a space background, but he's trying to hire smart people. So, again,
I want to let you know.
Try to be confident of these folks, but I am curious.
But this is interesting because we have a new person on our chat tonight, Joe Pastrito, a guy I know. I know I've met him a few times, years and years ago. Hi, Joe. Haven't seen you in forever. I don't know how you found us, but I'm glad you did. And you're asking the same question that I've been asking. How do they get rid of the heat? And I don't know.
I've actually talked to Philip about it. He's like, if I was going to rebuild my business plan, it was going to be about heat dissipation. So he thinks he's got a magic bullet for heat. I don't understand the how, but he says he does. So that was my exact question to him. At the end of the day, he's trying to build 4 kilometers square, 16 total kilometers of solar panels in the sky. I mean, that's pretty neat, but so he's going to have to figure something out. I don't know. Right. I'm all curious. There's definitely some skepticism, but that's what officially Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, now at Relativity, has said he wants to put data centers in the sky. So there's definitely seeing something that I don't see. That's what I'm going to say. Yep.
Well, apparently a U.S. company in Miami headquartered, it's a fund called Eldridge Industries, and they provided an agreement to provide cash through a bond to a German firm, a startup called ISAR Aerospace, and through that fund in the U.S., they have secured about 174 million dollars in funding. A few months after its first test flight of an orbital rocket, and so in March I think we talked about these guys. The Spectrum became the first orbital rocket to be launched from continental Europe, and that's a closely watched test for the region's bid to build a new space economy. But but it crashed seconds after blast off. We saw the film, but it failed. But they failed upward apparently because they just got 175 million in additional funding, and they're going to keep doing it. And they swear they're going to shake up the Europe's commercial space sector.
Well, if you got $175 million, you can do a lot with that.
Yes, you can.
I have not been able to raise $175 million, and I've failed plenty of times. So
yeah. I'd be happy with 40 right now for Avialto. So there you go.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. There are companies that we've never heard of pulling in gigantic amounts of money. Mm-hmm. I kind of love that, right? Like, we've been at this for a long time, and then there's stuff that happens at the edges that become mainstream that we didn't see. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right. You want to do one more thing, or
yeah? Well, you were talking about the bureaucrats in the EU. Well, here they are. Apparently, the Euro Commission just the other day proposed a new space act that would dial up regulatory oversight of satellite operators. That'll show them.
Yeah.
Including require them to tackle their impact on space debris and pollution or face significant fines. Now, that is a bureaucratic solution. We'll just, make everybody happy. We'll write a new law and we'll put regulatory burdens on people and have big fines on them if they don't comply.
Right.
And that'll increase their new space economy.
I really gotta wonder what they think is different about this amongst all the other rules that currently exist.
Well, that's why I had to throw it out there. It says, these guys, they've been doing this for God knows how many years, and they just won't stop.
Right. Well, I mean, this is true. By the way, this is U.S. Space Force line from, I think it's General Hyten, but I'm not sure. That line has been circulating around the world for a couple of years now, but it came out as a Space Force line, and it's like, okay, cool. Yes, we need to have rules. Setting space traffic rules for satellites may not sound as sexy as sending people to Mars, but that's real, and that's now, and that has an impact on our daily lives. Credit where it's due. That's really true. That's accurate and relevant.
Yeah, but I feel like that guy in the original Die Hard movie when he goes, "Welcome to the party, pal." You're kind of late to the table, but okay, we hear you. And another guy says, space is congested and contested, but that official was granted anonymity, so you can't even know who said it.
Right.
But he insisted on saying something.
Yeah.
Redundant and kind of useless.
This piece might be new. The cybersecurity assessment, encryption, that might be new. That might be the only thing in this document that's actually useful.
Well, it's happening here. It's just that DARPA is doing it. They've probably been doing it for years, and they're just not talking about it.
Yeah. But this is the Musk problem. I mean, that's Musk's headline.
God forbid someone get too successful at this.
Well, this part about his mercurial temperament just turns off the internet for Ukraine. I actually really think they should put some guardrails on this guy because he is messing with people's lives. That I really do believe that. Applaud helping folks in underserved areas. Really angry over his response to how people use the internet and just turning it off arbitrarily made me crazy. So yeah, I do think that there needs to be some stuff, some conversation about that. All right. What else? What do we got?
Okay, well, we've got a guest.
Yeah.
Maybe we should say hi to our guest and bring him in. It's for 20. I can't believe this. He's been going as longer than Livingston.
Uh-huh.
25 years. Dr. Charles Lurio. He's from out of MIT, and he has been writing this very interesting newsletter called the Lurio Report. It's ended up in my inbox a whole lot over the years. In fact, I know there's stuff he wants to talk about that's like right out of his current newsletter, which just came out like a week or so ago. But I've got stuff in an old inbox of mine going back over a decade.
Right.
And just for fun, I don't know when we'll have a time to get to it. I cherry picked stuff from like each year because this last thing he did came out in like this late in May, I guess.
Yep.
And then I found something from May of last year, and I found another one from May of the year before. You see where I'm going with this?
Right.
I got all the way back to 2014.
Nice.
And I thought, and I only mention it because of the consistency in product that he has put out month after month after month for years. It's set up the same way, always the same keen insights about everything, and how it's up to the point where he gets kind of like insider information.
Yeah.
And I just like to. As we're having him here, I want to know what's your secret, Charles. How do you make it so consistently good for so many years? Charles Lurio, come on in, man. Welcome to the program.
Well, hello and good evening to everyone. How do I make it so consistently good? I torment myself.
No, but you never torment anyone else, Charles. Ever.
I mentioned the website, but the website has become something of a historical piece at this point. People should contact me directly instead at Charles Lurio at thelurioreport.com.
Yeah.
If you want to look at the website, in fact, I just discovered today that a whole bunch of PayPal subscriptions have been turning themselves off because of something that I think was wrong at PayPal, and they had and they didn't admit that, of course. And that's what's linked in from there. So people should communicate with me directly. Okay, at this time.
Okay. Well, I know you want to get into current events because you mentioned that before the show. But I just have to go back with all this stuff that you've done over the years. I just have to go back and say, we always try to get a shot at your origin story.
All right.
How did what went into your head that says I have to write a monthly newsletter about New Space, even though even back then we weren't even calling it New Space yet.
Right.
How did that start? What drove you to do this?
It really started with what I had been doing, which was evolved from cold calling reporters in what was then major media,
Right.
And telling them about why they should pay attention to something other than NASA and these commercial possibilities and different kinds of ways of doing things in general for space flight. And I wanted, I was sending them items, and someone's who I happened to meet or had a discussion with at some point said, well, why don't you try to put this into some kind of a newsletter or report? And that's how began in the current form.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that was the path. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, but his format is very simple. It's plain text with a little tiny embellishment and basically a kind of a word file or a text file, and you always write it like you're writing a letter to your colleagues, and
right.
you lead off with "Dear acquaintances," and then you go into this incredible litany, that little table of contents and everything.
Well,
Um,
I have admittedly, I have left off the table of contents the last few issues
okay,
because
okay.
I was having some other things where, let's just say, I didn't want to spend excessive time on peripheral,
Format.
even
Format.
though that's not that much,
Yeah.
obviously, but I just was having some other problems and getting it out. So I just decided to go straight to the contents.
The meat.
And anyway, people should be interested in reading the whole thing anyway. So
Sure.
for the moment, at least.
I think so. Yeah, it's been very readable over the years. Again, it's pretty amazing the consistency in which you've done these things, and and obviously you make these contacts, and some of them are kind of insider contacts over the years, and they will tell you things that they won't tell their bartender some days. I think
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing to me.
Well, I appreciate your comment about that. Uh, and although I have to say it's gotten a lot more competitive over the last 10 years. I mean, I remember when I was talking to, I guess, I don't know if I started the conversation or he started. Anyway, I got a call from Eric Berger, and we talked a little bit, and then I told him to talk to some other people and so on. And now, everybody has their daily websites and their, inside reporting. So I've been more trying to emphasize the how the things fit together. It hasn't been as simple to get exclusive stories, but I sometimes get interesting stuff.
So
Still,
you're doing more analysis and synthesis rather
uh,
than
but I've been focusing
deep dive.
on more in recent times, over the last few years. So, um, hmm. Oh, okay. I thought you said something there. In this private chat.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, no, it's a matter of trying to see, well, in particular, like, for example, with this current issue, uh, trying to pull together some thoughts about the evolution of various ventures and capabilities and markets, and say, gee, what directions are things taking, and why and where have they come from, and sort of, but and either explicitly or implicitly why they have taken this, these directions and evolved in this fashion. Because going back, I can say, well, 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, we were talking about X, and as I had mentioned to you earlier, the business of the small satellite launch vehicles was like over overly overly abundant invention,
saturated. Yeah.
like crazy, and it's shaking. It got shaken down a lot, and really now it's really down to. But now things have evolved where people started to move towards medium payloads for the constellations, and of course, then there are these potential markets for. You mentioned the business of the solar panels for the data centers, and yeah, dumping heat is an interesting question there, and so and then the other one that is coming has been several companies actually, at least two that I've seen so far, are working on helium-3 retrieval from the moon, not for fusion reactors, which I always thought was, not a very good necessarily payback period, since we hadn't managed to make any fusion reactors. But now this thing with the major market now is for these quantum computer systems. And I mean, that's actually substantial enough that at least one of the companies has an agreement to provide some lunar H3. Now, whether they can pull it off, we'll see.
Yeah, we've referred to them as there's a couple cults in the space sector. There's space-based solar power, helium-3.
Oh yeah.
There's a couple of them that just it's zombie projects that won't seem to die, but
that's the way I thought of in essence of the helium-3 thing, and that but this has changed my perspective on it.
That's good. All right.
I mean, you have it turns out that there's a cooling cycle in the quantum computing world that you have to get down to a temperature that is, I think, something like 6 or 7 decibels after the 6 or 7 zeros after the decibel to within 0. I mean, a lot cooler than the background.
Right.
Well, the only other thing I was just reading today where I thought, well, here's an opportunity. I don't know how we can do it. Maybe a cable or something, like one of Michael's cables. But I learned that I didn't know this. The atmosphere, I knew it was cold out there on the outer planets, but apparently the atmosphere of Neptune gets down as cold as 50 degrees Kelvin. So if you want to take all those data centers and somehow you just dip them into Neptune's atmosphere for a few minutes, a couple of times a day, to keep them cooled off, maybe that'll work.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it probably, I'm already starting to think about how you do that.
Well, you are, yes, Dr. Lurio. It doesn't say specifically in your bio what your PhD is in. I'm assuming since you're from MIT, it's either an engineering discipline or a hard science.
Yeah, well, it was in aeronautics and astronautics.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and although ultimately the PhD was in something more resembling material science. Well, it was really material science, but it was under the Aeroastro department, and then it was. And it had to do with heat storage and extreme temperatures and so forth. So that was the background. Although, yeah, I was already advocating for different kinds of space things, even before I was at MIT, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
But the thing is, over 25 years, you've been advocating for new space and for more private commercial solutions for long before anybody took it seriously, and even for a long while when it was starting to be taken seriously in certain quarters, but still not in the financial sector all
Yeah,
that
no,
much.
I mean, you can't deny that what has changed everything is SpaceX going out there and
Yeah,
being able to actually cut the cost by a factor of 10.
yeah,
But getting that next factor of 10, that's the hard problem. And it may be harder because of the size of the vehicle they're trying to do it with.
yeah.
You know,
Because we've all advocated for this for a long time. But so you went from when we were nothing to now we're a $625 billion industry.
well,
Well, my question is,
yeah.
where was it along that process? Because you've seen it all, right? Where along that process did you finally start to feel really, really vindicated?
Vindicated. Yeah, I was wondering the
Oh,
same thing.
yeah,
There must have been a point, an epiphany moment that you got.
well, I would guess it was, yeah. No. Well, as you say, there was a point at which there seemed to be a shift in perceptions publicly, and that sort of was in the air at some point along the evolution of SpaceX flying and flying, particularly when they did the commercial crew thing, and that and even the commercial cargo to some extent, that they were actually doing something that otherwise traditionally NASA would be doing, and 10 times the cost or some outrageous price. I mean,
Yeah.
at one point, the Orion capsule was supposed to be servicing the space station, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's been hanging around for 20 years in development, and well, so yeah, no, I remember the time when this recent blow up of the Starship upper stage, which I guess other people too just call it ship. It's for convenience, since he calls the whole thing the Starship 2 and calls that the star. It's confusing. But anyway, so I just call the upper stage the ship.
Sure.
And so after this recent blow up with that, which was unfortunate, of course, but it happens. I mean, the key thing is that he's able to produce enough of them cheaply enough to keep trying.
Right.
That doesn't mean there aren't flaws in his technique, but I think basically he has the right direction. But anyway, the story that comes to mind when I saw this incident was when I think it was it was about 10 years ago when they were about to launch a satellite, and they had what looks like to have been a similar failure with the carbon fiber, the overwrapped cryogen bottle, and that destroyed the satellite, and boom, in a very similar, and the rocket, obviously, a Falcon 9. And I remember getting that message when I was not in. I was walking into a museum, or I was in a museum, not in the U.S. And then I suddenly got a cell signal, and I heard this story, and I it you know, and then I went out on the sort of the porch of this museum, balcony, and I started calling up people in the press. Say, hey, this doesn't mean the thing's over,
Right.
all that stuff. It's just, another step along the way.
Right. That's engineering the hard way. Yep.
That's right. That's right. So that, as I say, that was, yeah. But now there are there's certainly a whole retinue of people covering the field, that some of whom at least are excellent, and so not that I hesitate to critique things, however.
No, you've been a steadfast critic when things don't look good. You're definitely one of the people who calls things out. Tom, you said you've got a couple interesting articles from the Wayback Machine. Is there anything that you want to ask?
Well, I was just looking at it for consistency in style and results. It would take me a week to really do a deep dive into the stuff that he's done over the years, and I've been reading to say, hey, what did you have to? You thought back here in 2014, you thought this about that, and what do you think now? I mean, there was because you were, because Charles, you were very supportive of every player, everywhere at one time or another.
Yeah.
And whether they went high at one point, you're a big fan of X-Score for a long time, and then one day they just didn't exist anymore. And so
that was a tragedy at the time.
Yeah.
I used, as others had problems, I used to have a phrase in my mind, well, there'll always be an X-Core.
I'm sure Dave Maston said the same thing to himself.
Right.
Yeah, at one time.
And I was hopeful for them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it wasn't entirely exclusive, but I enjoyed speaking with the people there, and I thought they had a very interesting and canny approach to the issues. But it turned out that for a variety of factors that SpaceX really kicked the revolution into high gear.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, one of the other things I mentioned earlier was this business about the speaking of the piece by Phil McAllister about public-private partnerships. And so, even though the government things with commercial cargo and a commercial crew, and he was involved in at least the latter, he did well. He is, now that he's retired, he wrote a very interesting piece, about how the system internal to NASA is in major part ignoring lessons learned from those efforts, and they're slipping back into basically not putting all the risk on the company. This is interesting. Putting all the risk on the company, for one thing, at the beginning, and as if it were a cost plus contract, and and then changing what they want and effectively becoming the dictator of the basic configuration rather than the enabler of a capability of which their uh, uh, desired output could be a subset of the capabilities of the vehicle. In other words, the company should be developing for prospective private markets and that's how you drive down the cost, right? Because obviously the government market is going to be very small. However, even without catastrophically screwed up budgets, and so it's you need a market, and you don't need tons of people from NASA, which apparently is happening now. More and more sitting in the factory or the company headquarters and saying, oh, watching each thing and making recommendations that, the contractor starts to get concerned that they won't get any, that they won't have the NASA business at all if they don't change things according to what NASA wants. And yeah, go ahead.
I was really surprised they got a line in there. I don't have it up on screen anymore, but it was really saying that the Department of Defense is actually leading a bunch of.
Yes, that's true. I've noticed that for a number of projects. Because they haven't had a chance to go sour on the way to do something yet, quite. At least certain subdivisions. There was this. One of the examples might be this. Well, I don't know if it would have. I'm not quite sure what the framework is, but it's an example of a DoD supported program or development program to a degree, and that is that this company Gravitics.
Gravitics, yeah, they're local. They're local in my area.
They were one of the companies who went for the commercial station work, and they and proposed large station modules, but at the moment, one of their big things is they have some money from DoD to send up basically a spacecraft carrier that would then release replacement or additional satellites in case of emergencies or need as things became
the imagery. I don't know if I can find that very easily, but the imagery of that and the saber rattling. I've seen some press, especially kind of Al Jazeera and South China press, that they've taken the idea of a carrier and they've turned it into like an aircraft carrier style, like Death Star, because that drives their narrative. But it's pretty entertaining what they've done with that with that phrase carrier. But what it really means is pre-deployment of hardware up in the sky. Right? That's all it is. It's not the Death Star, so that's good to know. I'll see if I can get some pictures because they're pretty awesome.
Just a couple of asides. I've been watching all the conversation going on the public screen, and apparently Joe Bistretto is still with us. And I guess you mentioned X-Core. It's a little bit of a tender spot with him because he was one of the first two investors. in X-Core. And we've already invited him to be on the show sometime and talk about that. We'll see if that.
I remember him out at X-Core when a bunch of us got to. I think it was sleeping on the floor of the hangar there all night, and he brought a telescope and set it up, and that was because that was for the first of the Branson, the first attempt to go above 100 kilometers with Spaceship One, and that was the one that went above by 400 feet. Okay, that's different. I was just happened to look at the public feed.
Yeah. I guess. Well, also, I think actually Walt Anderson, I think, was also an investor in X-Core through a company. He didn't do it directly. He did it through one of his shell companies offshore, I think.
I hadn't heard about that. I can go back to when Iridium we thought was going to be a big.
All right.
Yeah.
When it was at a Space Frontier Foundation meeting when
I do have one question here from Dr. Doug Plata, who's a frequent viewer of the show.
Right.
He like to ask you, Charles, what you think your definition of commercial space is, because he said for example, could you call Antares commercial when they haven't ever launched a commercial satellite as a primary customer?
That is, I'm not sure. Well, yeah, it was. I'm not. Yeah. Well, NASA didn't necessarily dictate that these guys had to bet on the private markets. I guess what they did want was some private money into it, and they had, as I recall, a development program that was sort of an R&D thing up front. Now, I'm not sure the whole question of whether that was a commercial. Yeah. That emphasizes the question. No, but look, obviously SpaceX leveraged the whole thing for their initial Dragon vehicle, and then the Crew vehicle, and the Falcon 9, and but clearly the Antares was not designed with that kind of. I mean, it was more conservative, right? They weren't trying to return cargo. So NASA was hedging its bets. So to call it it may not have been a commercial entrant, but the overall program had the goal of commercial-like results for the whole package.
Okay.
I'm not trying to.
I know. The time goes by. We have like a minute left. Because we never got to get into your current newsletter, and we wanted to. I know. I was kind of curious. I've been looking at this. Something that popped out at me was Vast Space and their bid for the phase 2 of the CLD program. Right. These guys have been throwing tons and tons and crap tons of money into their whole development scheme for 3 years now.
Yeah, no.
And all of a sudden say, well, if we don't get this phase 2 bid, I don't know if we can make it.
Yeah. I mean, Haven 1 space station is their proof that they can do phase 2, and they're spending $1 billion on it, and the missions to it in total. And by the way, the thing I just remembered that the thing with the other with the Cygnus vehicle and the launch vehicle there, that was a second later choice after, remember rocket plane originally?
Oh God,
Reusable, and that bombed out, and for various reasons. And then NASA said, okay, let's get something that's more like, that's more conventional in a sense, that we can, get moving with. So there really is sort of an excuse for that. They got burned with rocket plane. So that the substitute didn't turn out to be as commercial as SpaceX is not all that surprising. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
we could go on and on, but unfortunately, we're out of time for the show tonight.
I'm trying to relax.
I know, it's fun. Dr. Charles Lurio, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope we have you back again sometime, and we can add even more to your legend. And
well,
and thank you for all your service and your great work that you've done for the last 25 years. God, we really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that, and send me a note. And I do prefer paid subscriptions, but
okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thanks so much. Just for a quick 10 seconds, I want to do a shout. We got a lot of people came in tonight. I guess everybody got to take a breather from ISDC, and now it's like all our crew is back. Jason Spector, Morty, Joe Prestritto, you're new. Thank you. I hope you'll keep coming back. I love seeing you. Martin Horowitz, thanks for coming. Doug Plata, of course, Dr. Doug Plata, and a lot of great folks. I know there are folks out there who don't sign in, so appreciate them coming too. And so next week, Monday, June 30th. June 30th is basically a property rights in space week. We've got actually 2 guests coming. Well, but on Monday, June 30th, our guest will be space lawyer Kamisha L. Simmons. And that's going to be a fun one. We met her at ISDC, and this is going to be an insane interview. So I'm looking forward to that right here, 8 p.m. Eastern on your favorite BAT channel. And from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, and for Michael Lane and Sean Key, I'm Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.